guys, so this lesson is going to be about the pentatonic scale. Now technically a pentatonic scale is any scale with 5 notes, but generally when people speak of the pentatonic scale they're referring to the major pentatonic scale. Now the major pentatonic scale is arguably the most consonant and the most pleasant sounding scale in existence. Now the reason for this is that it's made up of stacked perfect fifths. Now the perfect fifth is a very consonant and pleasant sounding interval. That's why it's called a perfect fifth. Now the technical reason a perfect fifth sounds really nice and consonant is because it's the third harmonic of the harmonic series. But again, that's sort of a little technical aside and you don't really need to worry about that for the purposes of this lesson. So if you want to derive or find the C major pentatonic scale, you start on the C and then you go up in perfect fifths until you get 5 notes. So up from the C to G to D to A and then to E. And so those are all the notes of the C major pentatonic scale. But obviously we want to play the notes in a row rather than up in intervals of perfect fifths. So then we have the notes C, D, E, G, A. And as you can hear, this scale sounds a little bit oriental. And another reason this scale sounds especially pleasant is because there are no semitones between any of the notes. Now the semitone being a very dissonant and harsh interval, by avoiding that we have a very nice and consonant sounding scale. Now, playing pentatonic scales is a good way of avoiding avoid notes or avoiding unavailable tensions. Now, I have separate videos on avoid notes and on available and unavailable tensions, so go check those out if you don't know what these things are. Now, just like any other scale, we can take this major pentatonic scale and create modes from it just by playing the exact same notes but starting and finishing on different notes. Now, the first mode of C major pentatonic is obviously C major pentatonic. Now, this scale doesn't have the note F in it, and F is an avoid note over a C major 7 and over a C dominant 7. Therefore, you can play the C major pentatonic over both of these chords. Now, keeping the same root, the second mode of the pentatonic scale is actually B flat pentatonic, starting and ending on the C. Now, this scale has an F in it, therefore you can't use this scale over a C major or a C dominant chord. However, you can use it over a C7 sus chord or a C minor 7 chord. Now that's because the F is not an avoid note, or it's an available tension over both of those chords. Plus we have the note B flat, which is implying a chord with a flat 7. So the C7 sus and the C minor 7 both fit that criteria. Now the third mode of the pentatonic scale is A flat major pentatonic, starting and ending on the C. Now this scale has an F, so we can again potentially use it over a C7 sus or a C minor 7 chord, but it also has an A flat, which is a flat 13. Now a flat 13 is not an available tension over a C minor 7 chord, but it is an available tension over a C7 sus chord. Therefore we can only use this scale over a C7 sus chord. The fourth mode of the pentatonic scale is the F major pentatonic, starting and ending on the C. Now again, this scale has an F and it has a natural A, or a natural 13 this time. So again, we can use this scale over a C7 sus or a C minor 7 chord. Finally, the fifth mode of the pentatonic scale is the E flat major pentatonic, starting and ending on the C. Now again, we find that this scale has this note F, So again, we can use this scale over a C7 sus chord or a C minor 7 chord. Now, this fifth mode of the major pentatonic scale is so widely used, it's gotten its own name, and it's known as the minor pentatonic scale. And of course, if you take that minor pentatonic scale and you add one more note, a sharp 4 or a flat 5, then you have the blues scale. And this brings me on to my next point. So technically, a natural 11 or a natural 4 is an avoid note or an unavailable tension over a dominant 7 chord. However, this doesn't apply when you're playing a blues. The blues is a very different beast, and it has its own sort of underlying theory. The blues is a very rough and a very dissonant, and dare I say, a very bluesy sounding genre. And not only that, in a blues, a dominant chord doesn't always function as a dominant chord. In the blues, a C7 can function as a tonic dominant. That is, the chord C7 doesn't exist in order to get you to the tonic, the F. The chord C7 exists in and of itself, by itself. It's its own sort of tonic. Now, I've got a separate video where I talk about the diatonic function of chords, so you can go check that out, and maybe this will be a little bit sort of clearer. But all you really need to take away from this is that the blues is a little bit different. The blues is a bit more bluesy and rough around the edges, and therefore a natural 11 is actually okay in a blues context. And so all of these pentatonic scales, all of these modes of the major pentatonic scale, whether or not they have an F in them, fit quite well over a C7 in a blues context, in a bluesy style or genre. And that's why the blues scale or the minor pentatonic scale still fits quite well over a C7. It does so in a bluesy context and therefore is sort of more allowable. And so the same applies to these other pentatonic modes. Like, for example, the third mode of the pentatonic scale, because it's got that E flat, A flat, and B flat, actually fits quite well over a C7 chord in a bluesy context. Now, taking it back to non-blues music theory, if we take the C major scale, we find that it has three naturally occurring major pentatonic scales in it. We have C major pentatonic, F major pentatonic, and G major pentatonic. Now again, pentatonic scales are a good way of avoiding avoid notes. Now over a C major 7 chord, the avoid note is F. Therefore, we can't play the F major pentatonic scale over this chord because it contains the note F. However, the C major pentatonic and the G major pentatonic don't contain the note F. Therefore, you can play those two scales over a C major 7 chord. Now, you can also play a D major pentatonic. And that's because it has an F sharp rather than an F. And an F sharp is an available tension over a major 7 chord, so it gives you a bit of a major 7 sharp 11 sound, or a bit of a Lydian mode sound. Now over a G7, the avoid note is C. So we can't play a C major pentatonic or an F major pentatonic because both of those scales have the note C. However, you can play a G major pentatonic because, again, that doesn't have the note C. Now you can also play a D flat major pentatonic over a G7 chord, and that's in a sense a kind of tritone substitution. From the G we're going to a D flat major pentatonic. And so in terms of the notes you're playing, we have a flat 5, flat 13, flat 7, flat 9, and sharp 9. Now none of those are avoid notes or unavailable tensions, and in a sense you're playing a part of the G altered scale. And so those are two major pentatonics which are good to play over a dominant 7 chord. Now if we take the chord D minor 7, now some people think that the 6, the B, is an avoid note, whereas other people say that it's not an avoid note. Now let's say for the purposes of this video that this, the B, is not an avoid note. That means you can play a C, F, and G major pentatonic over a D minor 7 chord. Now those three chords that I just played give us a 2-5-1 in the key of C major. Now notice that the G major pentatonic fits over all of those chords. So if you find a 2-5-1 in a particular key, as you often do in jazz, you can play the major pentatonic of the 5th degree of that scale. So in this case, a G major pentatonic. Now also, just quickly, in C melodic minor, there is one naturally occurring major pentatonic, and that's F major pentatonic. And there are no avoid notes in melodic minor harmony. So that means you can use the F major pentatonic on any chord derived from the key of C melodic minor. Now I've got a separate video on the modes and chords associated with the melodic minor scale, so you can check that out if you like. But essentially, if you're playing a minor 2-5-1, so a D half diminished to a G7 altered to a C minor major 7, then you can play a B flat pentatonic over the 2 chord, a D flat pentatonic over the 5 chord, and an F pentatonic over the 1 chord. Now it might at first sound a little bit strange playing a major scale over a minor chord harmony, but your ear will eventually get used to it, and jazz is all about sort of playing new and interesting sounds and trying to get different sort of sounds out of your various chords and scales. So in this video I've only covered the major pentatonic scale. Now there are many other types of pentatonic scales which are used in jazz. Like for example the Incen pentatonic scale, or various alterations of this major pentatonic scale or the minor pentatonic scale, like for example a blues scale, which I mentioned earlier, which is just an alteration of a minor pentatonic scale. But I'll leave all that for another day. Thanks for watching guys, feel free to leave any comments or questions. See ya!